Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, in which we bring you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Today, we'll be discussing the latest investigation into how India pressured Canada for years over Hardeep Singh Nijjar. We'll discuss all sorts of controversies at the swearing-in ceremonies of the Indian Lok Sabha, including, of course, an update on Amritpal Singh, how the diaspora is mobilising Sikhs for crucial elections coming up this year in the UK and the US, and an interesting tribute to the unsung Sikh heroes who gave their all for Canada. And if that's not enough, we have an interesting appeal to our audience at the very end of the show, so don't miss that, especially if you'd like to get more involved with getting your message out to our growing audience. And joining me today for Perspectives, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. I hope all is well there, and thank you to our viewers for joining us yet once again.
And of course, together we'll be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. As usual, we'll also take a look at a large batch of your great and, I have to say, very informative comments that you've sent us, and we'll be answering some of your questions raised in those comments with our own thoughts and, of course, perspectives. So sit back, relax, and to kick us off, James, what have you got for us today?
Well, we're going to start out this report with the update which happened in the Surrey courthouse today in the murder trial of four individuals, Karan Brar, Amandeep Singh, Kamalpreet Singh, and Karanpreet Singh. They have been put over until August the 7th, so giving the lawyers another 6 weeks to receive all of the documents from the Crown Attorney's Office and time for them to, of course, review them. All three of the suspects, which are in Vancouver, in the holding facility called North Fraser Pretrial Centre. And of course, Amandeep is in a Toronto area prison, waiting trial on other charges unrelated to the murder of Mr. Nijjar. But all four are facing first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder charges. Again, put over until August the 7th. We'll keep you updated. There was a packed courtroom today and a lot of supporters with the Khalistan flags outside the courthouse. And I thought that this would be an appropriate opportunity for us to take a look at an in-depth review that the Globe and Mail newspaper here in Canada has done. And they are looking at the life of Mr. Nijjar. And with that, they have put together an 18-page story. And I encourage you to read it. We're going to go over the first couple of pages and just some of the key information that starts the article. But again, it's an 18-page article, so we're not going to review it all. But I encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to read it. It's quite an interesting read and goes into depth about his life and his journey to Canada and such. So I find that of interest. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen here as we take a look at summary, and I'm not going to read it all. We're just going to go over some of the key points here to raise with you and to give you an idea as to what the article is. So the article is called The Nijjar Enigma, and in the article they talk about the people at the Gurdwara and other events that Mr. Nijjar had been speaking in front of and talking about the power of the people to form and to further the cause for Khalistan. At that time, of course, there were people that took offense or had concern, I shouldn't say take offense, but had concern with the level at which he was speaking, calling for some levels of violence. And I do believe that when he was speaking, he was also aware of the threats against his life and other key individuals involved in the Khalistan movement. And with the referendums coming forward over the following year and such, I think that the responses and the speeches that he was given were more in line with the threats and having to defend Sikhs as they did in 1984, having to try to defend themselves from the India government and attacks, and of course, as we know, foreign interference and extrajudicial killings. So that's kind of a brief introduction about that and what they were bringing up about his speeches. And they have some recordings that they have put out. There are limited videos and recordings of these speeches, but they have obtained a few of them. Now, of course, just over a year ago, the gunman opened fire on Mr. Nijjar at the Surrey Gurdwara, and in that, of course, it's brought up a lot of tension between Canada and India in relation to foreign interference and the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil, if indeed they, of course, had any involvement in that, which Canada is still investigating at the highest levels and still is promoting the fact that there are very credible reports and information pointing to India's involvement in those killings, not only of Mr. Nijjar, but the attempted assassination of his New York attorney and head of the Sikhs for Justice movement. Continuing down, of course, the Indian security officials have called that speech and using that towards their goal of slandering Mr. Nijjar and claiming that he was behind bombings and other terrorist threats to the India government and India as a whole. Of course, there were never any substantial or credible evidence that was put forward to the Canadian government to prove these claims, and that just goes along with the narrative that the India government is so frequently using to slander and cause a bias towards individuals who they feel are against their government or against their policies, and of course against the right of everyone to live freely and to speak openly in India. So with that, of course, you will want to draw your own conclusions, but the whole article is very even based in terms of looking at it from both sides, and it is a very well written and well researched article. The Globe and Mail, of course, is a national paper in Canada. They have a very high credibility index rating, and this is exploring many different avenues that I encourage you once again to read. I'm going to leave it at that and allow you to look at it yourself if you'd like at theglobeandmail.com or .ca, and then you can draw your own conclusions. But it chronicles his journeys to Canada and the many challenges that he faced in getting here. So, of course, with that, they will have other images and different parts of his life, including parts of his home images from India and other reports there. So I'm going to leave it at that and let you draw your own conclusions when you read the article. But again, the individuals who are accused of Mr. Nijjar's assassination will face the courts again on August the 7th. Until then, they all remain in custody. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Angus.
Yeah, an interesting article, and it draws interesting parallels actually with problems that we've had in the UK, for example, with Islamic extremism. And it contrasts very strongly with how the UK, a mature democracy, has dealt with Islamic extremism compared to how India has dealt with what it calls Khalistani extremism. Now, we've had preachers in the UK who've been preaching hatred, they've been preaching war, they've been preaching terrorism activities. And we don't go around killing them. We put them through the due process of law and then we imprison them if they are guilty of breaking the law, if they have been inciting violence. And yet here, even if Mr. Nijjar had been preaching violence potentially, then India have just broken every international law by going out there and assassinating him. They didn't demand that he faced that he was imprisoned. They just went out and assassinated him. They couldn't provide any credible evidence to Canada. Otherwise, Canada would have put him on trial. But there was no evidence to cast him as a terrorist. So yeah, it's this contrast of India calling itself a democracy, but certainly compared to Western democracies like the US, Canada, and the UK, where our democracies follow the due process of the law. Even if we don't like the results sometimes, we have to follow the process of the law. But we don't go around assassinating our political opponents. Now, there are double standards there, and we do, of course, lay ourselves vulnerable to criticism, because the US particularly has been going around assassinating what it claims are people who are terrorists. That is indefensible, and we do call that out. But certainly, Nijjar and other Khalistani campaigners are not terrorists. They are simple political opponents, and that's a very different thing that we're dealing with there. So yeah, thanks, James. That's a really interesting story. Okay, fun and games in the Lok Sabha over the last couple of days. Of course, the oath swearing-in ceremonies for the new parliament after the recent general election in India. Now, my first story I want to share with you today takes a look at some of the goings-on over these last couple of days in the Lok Sabha, and it's been enough to raise eyebrows what's been going on over a couple of incidents. And here, there's two articles which I've sort of merged into one here. And the first article is just a general overview of the political situation now that we find ourselves in India. And secondly, I'm just going to focus in more on the situation with Amritpal Singh. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has appealed to an emboldened opposition for consensus. And of course, we find ourselves in this position where he has had to form a weakened government in coalition with others. And what this has created, he's got a proper opposition at last. Now, the first session, which will run until July the 3rd, is a preview of Modi's plans for his third term and the likely formal appointment of Rahul Gandhi as leader of the opposition, a post that's been vacant for the last 10 years. So Modi's first two terms followed landslide wins for the BJP, allowing his government to drive laws through Parliament with only cursory debate. He basically, whatever he said went, because there was no sensible opposition, no strong opposition. But now analysts expect Modi to moderate his Hindu nationalist agenda to assuage his coalition partners, focusing more on infrastructure, social welfare and economic reforms. Interesting dynamics now in the Indian Parliament, where he can no longer steamroller this Hindutva, this RSS extremist nationalist agenda. Suddenly there is a credible opposition which can start pushing back on some of these extremist policies he's been pushing through at the expense of the minorities. So Modi-led lawmakers in taking the oath, his cheering supporters thumped their desks in support, and his opposition members waved the constitution in protest. Again, this very divisive situation that they found themselves in. But the Indian media have highlighted the fact that a much stronger opposition in Indian Parliament now sets up a very different next 5 years. All set to spar. That means lots of fighting to come, says the Hindustan Times. And the Indian Express front page, resurgent opposition set to push government. Rahul Gandhi, of course, has nearly doubled Congress's seats in Parliament. So again, the credible opposition. And the post has been vacant for the official opposition because the last two election results for Congress left it short of the threshold needed, and they needed 10% of the seats to form that official opposition. So then we move on to Amritpal Singh. So many will be watching if two lawmakers elected from behind bars, bitter opponents of Modi, will be allowed to join. One is the Sikh separatist Amritpal Singh, firebrand preacher, this article calls him, arrested last year after a month-long police manhunt. And the other is Sheikh Abdul Rashid, a former state legislator in Indian-administered Kashmir. It's unclear if either will be granted bail to attend the ceremony in person. And in fact, the article goes on to then say, elected by the people of Kador Sahib constituency, Amritpal Singh was debarred from assuming charge as Member of Parliament, as he was not granted any kind of release. So he was not allowed out of prison to swear his oath in the Lok Sabha, as really he should have been allowed to as an elected member of the Indian Parliament. His name was on the list of MPs who were scheduled to take the oath yesterday, but high drama was witnessed in the oath-taking session when his name was announced by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Well, on the one hand, his name was announced. On the other, he was not released from jail, so he couldn't appear to take that oath. He had submitted a written appeal to the Punjab government to grant him at least temporary release. But instead of granting him the same, the AAP government extended his detention by 1 more year. That's not true. It's actually by 3 months, which has made resentment grow among the Sikh masses. And then this article finishes by saying, debarring him from assuming charge as legislature is being termed as murder of the democracy in India. Yeah, I mean, it's a very strong reaction, of course. Amritpal Singh has been elected by a large majority in his constituency. He is not allowed to take his seat. He resides in jail on very questionable charges under this really nefarious legal piece of legislation, the NSA, the National Security Act. Yeah, all it's going to do is just going to fire up resentment in the Punjab, James, is it not?
It certainly is, and only time will tell where that's going to lead. However, of course, with not allowing him to take the oath and to hold him inside, of course, is going to have future ramifications when it comes to the next elections. But let's hope that that it's resolved long before then.
Yeah. Okay, let's swiftly move on. Another story now. Let's change gear a little bit here. This is a little bit legal and dry, but this is actually nonetheless significant for the Sikh community. I'm showing here a video. This is an interview of the new executive director of the Sikh Coalition in the US, Amritpal Singh. Now, he joined the coalition about 3 years ago. He had a background in state federal policy and advocacy for the Sikh community. But the Sikh Coalition itself is known for its great and powerful legal work and its lobbying of the US government on behalf of the Sikh community. It's achieved an awful lot in recent years, particularly over the transnational repression situation. It's managed to get a large amount of US senators on side who in turn have been acting as proxies for the community in lobbying the US government. But they have just launched a new fellowship program, and this is where the coalition will go around to the Gurdwaras and engage with the Sanghat members. They plan to ensure that every Gurdwara and the communities attached to those Gurdwaras have all the information they need on how to vote, how to register to vote in this year's US presidential elections, and how this process works. And they're there to help answer all the questions and to help with the awfully complicated state regulations and requirements to register and, of course, make your vote in those US elections. They intend very much to engage with the Sikh youth, the young generation, to make sure that they vote, because of course their vote counts just as much as anybody else's, and of course help them understand what it's all about. So they do intend to really use their position to help mobilise the Sikh youth in the regions. And they're working with a couple of organisations, the Asian and Pacific Islander American Vote Organisation, it's quite a mouthful, and the Asian Americans Advancing Justice Organisation. Now, both of these, together with the Sikh Coalition, they will provide a telephone number in Punjabi to explain and give information on how to vote. So do go to the Sikh Coalition's website, they will have all the information of that. So if you do, what they're saying is it is essential that everybody in the community votes. Their votes matter. It doesn't matter which side you vote for, but it's important that the Sikh community do, of course, get their voices and their opinions registered and heard within the US democratic process. James, I guess the same in Canada. The Sikh community forms a very large voting bloc.
Absolutely. The youth voice is and the youth voice is so important of all nationalities. So it's great to see more openness in terms of giving them the information they need to get their voices heard through the election.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, then finally, the third story from my side is, again, more fun and games in the Lok Sabha. This is a video which I'll show you now. This is the new BJP MP Chhatrapal Singh Gangwar, who gave his swearing-in speech, and he ended his speech, his oath, with the words "Jai Hindu Rashtra." Now, this has ignited social media. Jai is a Hindi word which, for those who don't speak Hindi, which is myself included, it is an expression of victory or triumph. And what he has actually said, Jai Hindu Rashtra, he is saying the Hindu Rashtra, all praise and all victory for the Hindu Rashtra. Now, imagine if a Sikh MP had stood up in the Lok Sabha in his oath ceremony and said Jai Khalistan. That MP would no doubt be arrested immediately and probably disqualified from Parliament. And in the same rationale, why shouldn't Chhatrapal Gangwar be arrested immediately and charged with sedition? You cannot stand up in the Indian Parliament and say something so partisan and so controversial. But if you want to say that, then of course you can't have the double standards. And if an MP from the Punjab, Amritpal Singh, for example, stood up and said Jai Khalistan, there's no doubt he would be arrested and thrown out of Parliament. So that has upset an awful lot of people. One of the comments on Twitter, actually, that highlighted this, his comment was, "This is pure Sanghi appeasement in Parliament." And the Sangh Parivar, I had to look this up just for anybody who wasn't aware of this, the Sangh Parivar represents the Hindu nationalist movement of India. Members of the Sangh Parivar, or the supporters of its ideology, are often referred to as Sanghis. So this gentleman on Twitter is saying this is pure Sanghi appeasement in Parliament. Yeah, of course, we know the RSS agenda is pushing this Hindu Rashtra. So yeah, there it is. If anybody had any doubt what's going on with the BJP and what their agenda is with the Indian government. It's the Hindu Rashtra, as mentioned here. Okay, so let's move on and let's take a look at our comments, your wonderful comments that we've been receiving. Lots and lots of comments coming in, and we'll take a look at our first comment here. This was after our stories talking about how this influencer has weaponized yoga, and the government and the state are weaponizing this simple pastime, this simple well-being pastime of yoga, and trying to spin this into somehow an anti-Sikh and certainly anti-Khalistan agenda. Now, Amritpal Singh, excuse my pronunciation, huge respect for the channel, thank you for that. We're handling the brutality of the Indian state government on... Oh, this is about the farmers' protest. Yeah, I wanted to raise this one, because this person raises the farmers' protest. 450 farmers got seriously injured and victimised, including, of course, that young man who was shot dead by the police. There were smoke bombs, mortars, rubber bullets. It was shocking, actually, if you saw some of the footage of how the law enforcement had waded into what was a peaceful protest. The media never covered those incidents. No, the mainstream media didn't, but we did. And what's interesting here, James, we did try to cover the farmers' protest, but you try and find material about this. Of course, the mainstream media in India, there was almost like a media blackout on it, although there were tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people marching, protesting about what was happening to the farmers, particularly in the Punjab, and the laws that were being brought in. Never reached the mainstream media, or very rarely did. It was a very sanitised version. They never actually showed the dreadful violence. These mortars, these smoke bombs, the rubber bullets. The people were being blinded by salt pellets being fired by police, and of course live rounds were used by police. It was shocking, and actually the global news agencies did manage to get footage of this. There was a bit on social media, of course, taken by people present on the marches. But yeah, James, where we enjoy a free press here in the West, India certainly were trying to bury as much of this as they could.
And there wasn't even a lot of reporting with the protests that were happening here in Canada in relation to the farmers. So it really was glossed over by all media. Yeah.
Okay, our next comment from Harpreet Baines. India do arrest, torture and harass the families of the person they're after, even in 2024. Avtar Singh Kandar told us the police kept picking up his sister and mother before they killed him. Yeah, everybody, almost without exception, that I have interviewed who is a high-profile campaigner for Khalistan or just basic Sikh rights, have family back in the Punjab, and they report that their families, innocent people, these are their wives, their families, their parents, even their children, back in the Punjab are intimidated and harassed by Indian law enforcement. They find the police knocking on their door or knocking their doors down, detaining them, taking in for detention and questioning for many hours. These are innocent people. It's just because they are vulnerable and they are controllable by Indian law enforcement, where of course their respective family member out in the diaspora they can't reach, or unless they try to assassinate them through transnational repression. It's a very cowardly, and it's a very undemocratic, and it's actually a frankly awful demonstration of what the Indian state is doing to these people. And then finally, the same correspondent, thank you for this comment, about the yoga specifically. It was done intentionally, yes. She was an RSS and BJP supporter, and actually more and more is being released on social media about this lady. There is all sorts of pictures of her with people. You mentioned photos with that Kangana Ranut that got slapped in Chandigarh earlier this month after mouthing off about Sikhs and the mothers that were at the farmers' protest. Yeah, I think it just vindicates what has been said, that this lady just very deliberately did a very provocative act on a sacred site, knowing full knowledge of what she was doing. Okay, let's take a look at our second.
It's all about the clicks for some people.
Exactly, and it was how it was spun. It was how it was spun by the state, where of course they alleged that she received rape and death threats from the Sikh community, and the SGPC had to come out publicly and say that is not true. She has not received death and rape threats. We do not do that as a community, even if they are deeply offended. This comment from Gursavak Singh, Hindu female Pagaya Sadhvi, accused of bomb blast in, you have to excuse my pronunciation here, Maligaon, killed nearly 30 people on a train, and she won the election from jail and was brought into Parliament. But Mr. Amritpal Singh was only detained and cannot come out of jail. And that's the difference between a Sikh and a Hindu. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you for the comment. Yes, this refers to Amritpal Singh, as we've been talking about, has not been released to take his oath in Parliament, as opposed to this female. And I actually, this prompted me to do a little bit of research into this Pagaya Sadhvi. Now, Pagaya Sadhvi, or Sadhvi Pragaya, is also known as, or was originally known as Pragaya Singh Thakur. She's an MP for Bhopal constituency and currently under trial for multiple charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Yes, she's been up to no good. But more interestingly, she joined various affiliate organisations of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS. And as political scientist Christophe Jaffrelot said, she became the symbol of the 2019 elections, in which nebulous fringe elements of the Hindutva ideology became mainstream. So she is, again, another representative of the RSS who's been brought in, and of course they've managed to get this extremist, nationalist agenda into the mainstream. It's now mainstream politics in India, and it's they call out Khalistanis for being extremists. The real extremists are sitting there in Parliament, as demonstrated here. And James, if you do remember, I think we reported only a few days ago, or some time ago, that something like 25% of Modi's cabinet are all criminals. They've been charged with the most awful, serious crimes. I mean, what sort of message does that send?
It's incredible, and to think about these people are making key decisions on behalf of one of the largest populations in the world.
Yeah, indeed. And final comment, and again on that same story, D. Harminder Sekon. Thanks, Mr. Scott and Mr. James. Well, thank you. Following the reasons why I think the role of Indian-Canadian spy agencies in the Air India bombing is suspicious. So it talks about, how many Khalistanis basically sought refuge in Canada after, particularly 1984, and indeed during the 1980s, in that genocide against the Sikh community in the Punjab. Many hundreds of thousands fled the Punjab in literal fear of their lives. So why would they go to Canada and why would Canada let them in if these people allegedly had been behind this bombing? And recently, the Canadian Parliament observed the moment of silence for Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Why would they honour such a group of people in their Parliament who bomb their citizens? Exactly. It's logical, isn't it? And it does highlight, and as you continue in this comment, all this was done to malign Sikhs at the international level so as to portray Sikhs as terrorists and therefore justify killing Sikhs in India. Yeah, again, and we talk about it on a regular basis, and we talked about the suspicious background and the context of that Air India, and James has covered it several times as well about the commemorations. There is a strong feeling and huge amounts of evidence that point to the fact that Air India was not a Sikh terrorist operation. It was most probably an Indian intelligence operation. The problem is how on earth does that evidence to prove this fact come to light? Because, of course, all the intelligence agencies are sitting on this evidence, and, of course, they don't want this out because it would cause such a humongous outcry on an international basis as well, particularly in the context of Indian-Canadian relations, James.
Absolutely, and even one of the politicians in attendance at the memorial event in Vancouver on the 23rd was calling for more transparency with the investigative information.
Indeed. Right, let us move on to our final section of the programme today. And James has got for us today a very interesting video which is worth a watch, commemorating and showing appreciation for the Sikh community's contribution to Canada and ultimately the price that they have paid in their dedication to the communities that they have served. James, over to you.
Absolutely, and we're going to take a look at a video here of Private Buchan Singh, and he signed up for the Canadian military when he was 22 years old. And there's a lot more detail that we can go into, but I think we'll just let the video speak for itself and show that he is one of the reasons why there is so much respect for the Sikh community in Canada, even though during World War I there were only 9 Sikhs that fought, that signed up from Ontario. However, Mr. Mr. Buckham Singh is actually the only known World War I or II veteran of Sikh background that has an official war memorial and burial in Canada. So let's flip onto the video and move that along so that we can end fairly much on time, as we're running a little behind tonight.
A testament to valour. The Sikh soldier amidst the trenches. Amidst the chaos of the First World War, a lone figure stood out. A Canadian Sikh soldier, his turban a beacon of faith and courage. Private Buckham Singh, a farmer's son from Punjab, now found himself on the front lines in Europe, fighting for a land he had never seen. His story, like that of many other Sikh soldiers, is a testament to the valour and sacrifice that often goes unnoticed in the annals of war. Buckham Singh's journey to the trenches of Europe was a testament to his unwavering spirit. Leaving behind his family and farm, he answered the call to duty, driven by a profound sense of loyalty to his adopted homeland, Canada. The journey across continents was arduous, filled with uncertainty and danger. Yet the Sikh soldiers, with their characteristic resilience and unwavering faith, faced every challenge with stoic determination. Amidst the inferno of the Battle of Ypres, Buckham Singh and his fellow Sikh soldiers fought with unwavering courage. Their actions, driven by a deep sense of humanity and compassion, earned them the respect and admiration of their fellow soldiers, regardless of race or religion. A legacy forged encouraged Canadian Sikhs on the battlefields. The story of Canadian Sikh soldiers is deeply intertwined with the history of Canada's involvement in global conflicts. From the battlefields of Europe to the shores of Normandy, Sikh soldiers have stood shoulder to shoulder with their Canadian brethren, fighting for freedom and democracy. Their contributions, often overlooked in mainstream narratives, are a testament to their unwavering loyalty and commitment to their adopted homeland. They faced discrimination and prejudice, yet their spirit never wavered. The Second World War saw Canadian Sikh soldiers once again answer the call to duty. From the deserts of North Africa to the beaches of Italy, they fought with distinction, earning numerous accolades for their bravery. The liberation of Europe from the clutches of tyranny owes a debt of gratitude to these unsung heroes. The Korean War, a conflict often overshadowed by the two world wars, saw Canadian Sikh soldiers once again demonstrate their valour. Fighting in a distant land, amidst unfamiliar terrain and harsh conditions, they displayed the same courage and tenacity that had become their hallmark. Their contributions to the war effort, though often overlooked, were significant. The aftermath of these conflicts saw many Sikh soldiers choosing to make Canada their permanent home. They had fought for Canada, bled for Canada, and now they sought to build a better future for themselves and their families in this land of opportunity. Echoes of Valour, the enduring legacy of Sikh contributions. The legacy of Canadian Sikh war veterans extends far beyond the battlefields. Their sacrifices have helped shape Canada's national identity, reinforcing the values of diversity, inclusivity and equality. Their stories serve as a powerful reminder that Canada's strength lies in its multicultural fabric, its ability to embrace people from all walks of life. The contributions of Sikh Canadians are woven into the very fabric of Canadian society, enriching its cultural tapestry. Monuments and memorials across Canada stand as testaments to their valour. Their stories are increasingly being recognised in history books and classrooms, ensuring that future generations will remember their contributions. The echoes of their valour resonate in the countless acts of service and community involvement undertaken by Sikh Canadians today. From serving in the armed forces to excelling in various fields, Sikh Canadians continue to make significant contributions to their communities and to the nation. The story of Canadian Sikh war veterans is a powerful reminder that heroism knows no boundaries, inspiring generations to come. This video brought to you from your friends at Propix, Canada Media Limited. Remember to like, follow and subscribe to support more amazing content.
Wow, powerful stuff, and what a legacy. And yeah, 83,000 Sikhs gave their lives in 2 world wars, and I think over 100,000 seriously wounded. So yeah, quite a sacrifice. But there you have it, that was Perspectives. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We are loving the questions that you're raising and pointing out some very interesting angles that only you, our audience in the community, of course, can tell us about. So please do keep those coming in. And also worth mentioning once again that we do very much appreciate your kind words of support. And don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlodgetv.com on any news items that you'd like us to highlight that we might have missed. And especially if you have any interesting comments you'd like to talk to record on video for us. And if we like them, we'll broadcast them, maybe even give our opinion, good or bad. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching Perspectives. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James.
Thank you again for tuning in, and don't forget to like, follow, and share with everyone to get them involved with us.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We'll see you next time.